Hey there, I am Cole McRae, and you are listening to Beyond Keywords, the Advanced Digital Marketing Podcast. Did you notice that? There's no music in the background. That's a bit weird for anyone who's actually listened to my previous podcasts. If this is your first one, it doesn't really matter. I'm changing the format up a bit, making it kind of a talking to you thing rather than this heavily produced radio show. I did come from radio as a background, so bear with me. This is new. Well, more just like a live show. Let's chat about cookies. Other than being a delicious thing you can get at Subway with your sandwich, they're also incredibly important to how we do tracking. Almost all forms of marketing need some kind of conversion to work towards, and a lot of conversion tracking is about to go away. Maybe I should back up a little bit and start with a little bit of history of what's been going on recently. So, don't know if you heard, but Safari, well, Apple themselves, are on a bit of a privacy kick, and I have no qualms with that. The issue is they decided to basically kill third-party cookies in Safari. Now, third-party cookies are a tool used by us marketers to help track people in many ways. One of them is, through view-through conversion. So if someone sees one of my ads and then later on converts, that ad gets a little bit of credit other than just being last-click attributed. And attribution in general is about to go away in a big way. Programmatic is going to have some huge issues. Third-party data is not going to work anywhere near as well as it used to, though personally I found it was never that good to begin with, but that's going to go away. Second party will still be useful. First party, that's where everything's going to be, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But that's a lot of things to kind of lose. Attribution and view-through conversions, that's kind of important, and cross-domain tracking is going to have issues as well, and just a whole bunch of other things. So you may be saying, how do you know? How do we know it's going away? What, did someone just declare it as a law thing? Well, it's a mix. So first of all, Apple's the first. They're on a privacy kick, and they've decided to block basically all third-party cookies from Safari, and are putting pretty hardcore limitation on first-party cookies as well. So that means that, I don't want to get into the specifics, but they were the first to kind of do it. After them, Chrome has gone ahead and added options. The people at Google have added options for you to control and block third-party cookies if you wish as a user of Chrome. And IE has announced that they will soon be adding similar options. So, scary. Then there's the law, as I said. Now, there is no just, third-party cookies are against the law. That's just not a thing. But what there is what you'll probably already know of is GDPR. And it has some hardcore rules around data usage. You have the California legislation. And here in Canada, we're working on something privacy and data specific as well that's going to be somewhat similar. So the actual law is also catching up and doing similar things. It may not be saying that third-party cookies are banned, but it's putting a lot of controls on that are getting us more towards that kind of idea. So really, what I'm saying is third-party cookies cookies in general are not going to be dead, but their usefulness is going to be massively reduced, and people just aren't as okay with them as they used to be. The average person just doesn't feel all warm and fuzzy about them, and I could sort of get that. I've got no qualms with that issue. So, as I said, there's the law, there's the actual browsers doing that, and it's something that us marketers have to kind of think ahead about and try to work towards solving. But let's talk about what actually is staying. So what kind of cookie stuff is staying? So first of all, first-party cookies in terms of logins, that's going to be totally fine. You log into a website, leave, come back later, it'll certainly stay logged in. Don't worry about that. That's not an issue. There might be a time limit, though, so that's something that I don't really have to get into. It's a product thing, but it is something to consider. Using first-party analytics, such as Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics, that'll continue to work fine as long as it's just on one domain. So one domain, one site, and you're doing all your tracking on that. No issue at all. You'll be totally fine tracking all your conversions and whatever else you track. First-party audiences, so Audience Manager, which I use at my current place and almost everyone uses, as well as any other DMP, the actual first-party audiences from your analytics, from your call centers, from anything else, that will all continue to work just fine. And, of course, if you're attaching your CRM data, for example, that's going to be totally fine as well, but it's going to be a lot harder for you to connect that with any kind of third-party data. So I guess one question is, other than the obvious privacy reasons, who does this actually help? Because us marketers losing out on third-party data, losing out on attribution, even something as simple as view-through conversions, that's an issue. That's a big issue we kind of have to deal with. So we're going to lose a lot of the quality of our marketing. But it does help someone. It helps publishers. So publishers have been trying to get into the third-party data game for a while, and they've been doing okay with that. I don't think it's been a huge, massive moneymaker for them, because most of them aren't as sophisticated as some of the data companies out there that have been really killing it in the third-party data space. But instead of using cookies to find an audience, which is what I've been doing through, say, programmatic, which is absolutely amazing, and I can do a lot of really cool things, and actually makes me to get less expensive views, and I get the views just for the people who are the right people. I now have to buy the ad for basically everyone. I have to go old school and do the newspaper magazine type model. It actually takes a step back for us marketers, which is kind of a step forward for publishers, because they'll have a lot more money to kind of work with. They'll say they have sophisticated technology, and they'll be using things like their first party data can still be helpful on their own site. So if someone visits, say, a sports section of a publisher site and then goes on to another section, they can still show sports ads to that person. So it actually increases the inventory in certain spaces if they need more inventory for that space, but it doesn't really help us marketers that much, because we want to go after individual people, not so much just large groupings who happen to be reading a specific article. And this is not new. This is something, this is old school, but it's also something Google was talking about at Google Marketing Live this year. They mentioned that part of their machine learning takes context more into account than it used to, actually. So the context of the page that you're on is a fallback now if it can't use the proper cookie data. So that it can still show a relevant ad based on the actual context, which is kind of what AdSense started with and was never that great, I found. But hey, at least it is something. So I guess that brings up the question of what is actually going to be a fix. What's the solution? And there's a few things. So there's things that companies are doing. So I think that's probably what a lot of people are interested in. So I'll go over that. But there's also things that we as marketers should be working on so that we're not kind of left hanging, because this is happening quick. Very, very, very fast. I'd say within a couple years, it's going to take full effect, and we're going to start seeing lost performance. Should be already, really. Safari accounts for 30% of a lot of websites' traffic. So take a look at your analytics and just see how many people are using Safari. As they update, you're going to be losing a lot of that audience in terms of attributed data, which is a big loss for you. So what are companies doing? Let's jump into that part. Google first, because they're kind of one of the big players in the ad space, and it is a huge part of their revenue. They're pushing their audiences. They've been pushing it for a while, and now they're just doubling down on them. They have audiences such as their affinity audiences, their in-market audiences. There are other audiences. If you look into analytics under audiences, you'll see all of those available to look at. I have to give them credit. Those audiences are pretty powerful. They are things like people who are in market for a new car, and they're pretty accurate that those are people in that market. I have no issues with that. I've tested it and it seems to work quite well. My only issue with those audiences is that they're unknown. I don't know anything about that audience other than what Google tells us. I just have to trust them. Not to mention, it's inside Google's ecosystem. I can't take it out of that ecosystem. So I can't advertise to this in-market to cars audience outside of AdWords or outside of DoubleClick. I have to do it through only Google properties, which is very, very frustrating. So if I have my own programmatic solution, if I'm using TubeMogul, for example, it's significantly harder to target. Like, I guess I could find a way, and there are clever solutions, of course, but they can get complicated. So I don't like things being inside their little black box of Googleness. The other thing is Google's customer match, and Facebook has their own customer match as well. Those are basically cookie proof because they're using people's actual account information. So you're uploading email addresses, Google matches it to their account and has all that data connected to them. So that should be totally fine, and that's really where Google's diving in to get that data for the in-market as well. So it is going to stay effective. That's not going away. So if you're using customer match, you're good. You're very good. So the other big player that I'm keeping an eye on is Adobe, because Adobe DMP is, of course, Audience Manager is incredibly important. It's one of the major players, and we all have to keep a close eye on that for anything cookie related. And they have a few things they're working on. They're being quite quiet about it, though. I have heard through various means of some potential solutions. They did just release the way you could use a destination that works to upload emails to Facebook. So that's an automated way to do that, connecting it with your CRM data, which is incredibly powerful and does simplify things. I can see them using that with their ID database to really get some connections making that work, but it's still kind of cookie based. So we'll see what kind of solutions they can come up with to get us away from the whole cookie world. Facebook and everyone else is doing the same thing as Google, I've found so far, is they're trying to create their own magical audiences. Microsoft is trying to be ahead of the ball. They have those LinkedIn audiences, which are very powerful, and Microsoft's own audience network that they're building out as well. It's nowhere near as good as Google's, but they are working on that, so they're not behind. So Bing Ads has those kind of things. I do like to look at the LinkedIn audiences. They look powerful, so keep an eye on that. I found you can take just a clever thing I can give you guys. I don't know if it's that clever, but to get audiences outside of these systems, one quick way is to do say a LinkedIn campaign in Bing Ads. Throw a UTM parameter into the URL, the ads that are just for that campaign, and call it whatever you want for that audience. Call it LinkedIn audience, Bing LinkedIn audience. And then anyone who clicks through to that will be counted as part of that audience within your own first-party analytics. You could then push that to whatever other system you want, Google, Facebook, whatever, and remarket to them there, which is one thing. But the other thing you could do is you could also use the power of Google and Facebook's lookalike audiences to find similar to those LinkedIn audiences, which should give you at least some kind of useful, interesting data and useful, interesting people to market to. So there's an idea just to give a try to if you want. So I guess the next question is, what should we do about this? Other than just trying to take audiences out of these systems, we kind of have to be omni-channel. We can't focus just on Facebook or just on Google, and trying to advertise in each one is an insane amount of work, and to make it all connect properly and get the best possible journey for your customers that's a lot of work. So there's a few things I'm kind of working on. One is you have to have some kind of single ID for all your customers. The login is a big one that a lot of people are looking at. If you have a way for people to log in and voluntarily give you data, something like rewards programs are extremely popular for that. You could also do just putting a lot of your products behind a login could help to do that. And basically any way for someone to create an account and then give you that data on a regular basis is incredibly useful. Though if you're looking at things like rewards programs, do know that people are having challenges signing up for more. People aren't having challenges, but people don't want to sign up for more of these anymore. So people kind of max out. I believe the number I heard was 8 different rewards programs. If they're in 8, they stop. They just don't bother signing up for anymore. So it's going to be an uphill battle if you're not already doing that. And then, so logins in general are going to be kind of important. The other thing that I hate is click-through rate. It's going to become much more important. We're not going to be able to track impressions. That's going away. And we have to figure out the quality based on an individual click and then based on the actual conversion immediately after that click. So that means a focus on better creative is going to be incredibly important, and then things like word of mouth. But this kind of gets into another thing I've been thinking about in terms of marketing, is that I don't want to focus anymore on clicks even. I want to focus on number of impressions before a sale. I've done some studies on my own data. I can't share too much of that, but maybe do it on your own data and see what you find. I find the more impressions someone gets before we try to convert them, the easier it is to convert them, to lower that CPA. So that's why when display is combined with search, for example, that search conversion rate goes up. And it's been proven with other companies as well. And there's a lot of ways to get impressions. Sure, you can't make sure all those impressions connect and track it, but you can get as many impressions as possible. Now, that could be done through display, as a lot of people are probably thinking, I'll do programmatic, but you could also do that through getting reviews, through press, through SEO. And SEO, it could be based on just having your results be seen. There's the big controversy recently. Rand Fishkin shared where people, where Google only actually have a click. Half of searches on Google are no-click searches. A lot of them being because Google gives the data at the very top. If you search for sports scores, for example, you don't have to click. Sports scores are actually shown in Google for you, and you just get the answer and leave. So if you could be the one giving those answers, sure, you don't get the click, and you don't get the immediate satisfaction of a sale, but you get that impression. And if you get a whole bunch of those added up, plus reviews on sites people go to, people mentioning you on YouTube, going back to influencers, just being mentioned. Doesn't have to get the sale right away. It just has to be a mention, an impression. Your email subject line. They may never open that email, but seeing that subject line can still count as an impression, which gets you toward that easier sale at the end. And with the clicks being super expensive, like I said, they're going to be more expensive, and we're losing tracking on conversion, so CPA is going to be somewhat less effective, and a lot of various machine learning solutions people come up with are going to be slightly less effective. Well, fight it. Make it so that CPA is super low because you got 1 billion impressions before that person actually went for the sale. So that's kind of one of the solutions I've been looking at and thinking about, and definitely let me know your thoughts on that. So I guess the other thing is instead of remarketing, so remarketing, of course, is a classic way to get great revenue, and it's incredibly important. Always keep doing remarketing, but what you should also try doing a lot more of is creating customer match audiences based on your best customers. And this isn't just based on the customers that are customers or buy. It should be on the actual very best. So if you have super premium level customers, or customers that are just the lowest cost, or the customers that give the best word of mouth marketing for you, create a grouping, an audience of those, push them into Google, push them into Facebook, and let them create these lookalike audiences. Bing also has that. And then use these lookalike audiences for a lot more of your marketing. So if you mix these awesome impression-based marketing you were doing before, the getting those tons and tons of impressions before the sale, and then to get the actual clicks, you're doing it based on these customer match audiences that are based on the people that are the absolute best customers for you, you'll get more revenue in the end to make up for that lower conversion rate because you're losing out on the data from the attribution-based losses that you'll get. I hope that all makes sense. It sounded like it made sense as I was saying it, but we'll see when I go back and listen to this. Let's see how much editing I actually have to do for this thing. It's going to be a shorter podcast, but I hope that kind of covers what I was trying to get to. We are losing out on cookies. It's not the end of the world, though. There are some things you can start working on. The impression-based marketing, maybe that's what I'll call it. Maybe I'll come up with something better. Customer match based on your best customers, and also looking at better creative and getting that CTR as high as possible so that you can connect those people. Then, of course, you also need logins. Some people are putting their products behind logins. Others are doing a rewards program. Figuring out your best customers through that is also useful. Plus, rewards programs is your customers voluntarily giving you really, really useful data. So you might as well have that if you can sell it. You do have to market your rewards program, and that costs money and time and effort. So keep that in mind as you're going into it. Thanks. That's me, and this has been Beyond Keywords, the Advanced Digital Marketing Podcast.